guys, Cecile here, your full-time spoken word poet and creative, and this video is all about how to not overshare your life within your creative work. Now, I want to emphasize that this is really important because oversharing can be weaponized against you in the future. And we've seen it over and over again. People try and make changes within their life, they try and make lifestyle changes, transitions, and what ends up happening is people don't have the same grace for them that we hope that they have for them. And the reality of that is because people are judgmental. We are judgmental because sometimes we think of ourselves higher than we should. But this video is all about how not to fall into that and how to make sure that what you're sharing is appropriate, relevant for your audience, and helpful, not just for you as the artist, but also for the people that are watching or listening to your work. Now, the first question I want you to ask yourself whenever you are about to post something, share something, perform something is, are you over it? And this is a really important question because as somebody that used to go to a lot of open mic nights, this is something that is not considered. I mean, unfortunately, if you've gone through a breakup 24 hours before, it's probably not appropriate to then go to the open mic night and then share the poem because you're hurting, you're bleeding. As creatives, part of our purpose and our calling is to share and to be vulnerable and to be truthful. But the other element of it is we want to be impactful. And I suppose the question I have to ask you is it impactful and is it helpful if you are bleeding all over your audience? Probably not. And unfortunately, I've been a culprit of this. I've not been over something, whatever that may be in the past. I've shared too soon. And what's ended up happening is that instead of the audience actually receiving something really positive, they've actually fallen into a sense of shame or guilt or immense sadness that didn't need to happen as a result of what I was sharing. I feel like an example of when I have shared appropriately and done this really well is when I wrote my story about attempting to unalive myself when I was a teenager. This poem that I had written was in collaboration with Joshua Domfe, who is a brilliant pianist and such a wonderful artist. And we performed this piece, End of You, at Ronnie Scott's. And the expression on people's faces was so solemn, so deep in reflection, and there was just a sense of sadness in the room. From my perspective, I actually couldn't see one dry eye in the room. But what I realized in that moment is that people were not crying because I was in the same place. People were crying because they could see that this girl in this previous life that was sharing this story, this girl that was suicidal and low, has turned into a woman and she's developed into something beautiful. She's actually understood that her power and her strength and her story is important. And so looking back at the original question, just ask yourself that before you decide to share anything with the world. Now, the second question I want you to ask yourself is, are you sharing for attention or are you sharing for impact? Sometimes when we share, we're sharing because we want to be heard, we want to be seen, we want people to notice us. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that in its entirety. However, I do genuinely believe as an artist, our responsibility is to essentially lead the audience to some sort of understanding about themselves or to some sort of greater perspective or to challenge them. A lot of the time in art, and I will say this as a spoken word poet, the problem is that sometimes we are bleeding on our audience and we're not actually giving them the opportunity to heal. We're all kind of sitting in a room, you know, like an Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're all bleeding on each other, which is an important part of art to some extent, but that's not the complete picture. I think the complete picture of art is that it challenges us to be better people. It challenges our audience to change. It challenges our audience to develop. And as we complete that exchange, what's happening is that we are continuing to grow and develop, and so are they. And so ask yourself that question, are you doing it for attention or are you doing it genuinely to impact and influence people? And my final point is, ask yourself this question. Did you write it for somebody else or did you write it for you? Or replace the verb with something else. Replace the verb write for something else. Did you perform that for somebody else, or did you perform that for you? Did you create that for somebody else, or did you create that for you? Sometimes as creatives, we write or we perform or we act or we create for us. And that may be coming from a place of pain or sadness, and that's completely fine. But does it need to move from the private sphere to the public sphere? If the audience was for one, that one being you or me or another creative down the street, then is that not enough? Why is it that we always feel the need to have to share everything? And I think I can answer that myself as a creative. It's because we want to be seen. But I think we have to allow ourselves to heal first, to grieve first, and to give the work its justice and its space to breathe. And when we allow too many people to come into that space immediately, what ends up happening is something that could be really powerful becomes a weapon. I hope that video was helpful. If it was, please give this video a thumbs up. I have so much more content for you, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Bye.